For AP Biology or College Biology, we're going to be focusing in on Unit 3 Cellular Energetics, which is focusing more on Section 3.2, which is all about enzymes and its relationship to catalysts. Before we get started, please note the disclaimer listed below. Okay, let's get started. So let's talk about enzymes in general and what are they? So usually when we talk about some sort of chemical reaction, we're talking about item A and sometimes another item B, and they may combine together. So this is just one of many ways in which you can see a reaction. You could see a different type of reaction where there is the product that now has to break down as well, or you could have two separate products, so like A, B plus C, D, which have to flip-flop around and then they become A, D plus B, C. Now, the point of this video or AP biology in general is not really to understand the nitty-gritty of chemistry. So I'm not going to focus on the types of reactions these are. Instead, I'm going to focus in on how this relates to enzymes and what you need to know for AP biology. So we're going to stick to the most simplest form, which is that there are some reactants and they mix together to formulate some products. Now, we can say that this is the same way as someone walking up a hill or riding up a hill. We know that they have to get their final destination. So they have to get from the bottom to the top of the hill. However, we want to speed up that reaction. So we might give them a little boost of energy to get from the bottom to the top. So, in other words, we know that this person who is walking up the hill is always going to get to the top, regardless of whether or not they have an enzyme or a battery pack attached to them. However, the enzyme or the battery pack provides that sense of boost to basically lower the amount of energy that they need to exert. So, going back to enzymes, we know that enzymes basically speed up chemical reactions in certain things. So, when they talk about that, they're talking about the fact that, yeah, once again, we know that someone is going to go up that hill, and we can say that the bottom hill is like the reactants, and the top of the hill is like our products. We know that the reactants will eventually turn into the products, but the act of having the enzyme there basically speeds up the time frame in which the person goes from the bottom to the top, or speeds up how the reaction goes from the bottom to the top. Now, the way that this works is the enzymes work in a way that they're going to lower the energy that is needed for the reaction from the start. So they're not utilizing any energy, or I should say, they aren't using as much energy to really start that start process. So they can basically have the enzyme work faster by lowering that energy that is needed to go from reactant to product. They take that away from the actual reactant. So basically, what ends up happening is enzymes will make it easier for those reactants to turn into the final products. That is the main goal of enzymes. So if we look at this graph right here, this is a very common graph that you'll need to know for AP biology. And the reason why I say you'll need to know this is because they'll give you some sort of multiple choice question or free response question, changing up the questions to basically focus in on this graph and this graph alone as it relates to AP biology and enzymes. So it's important to understand the meaning of this graph, not because you'll get this graph as a fill in the blank, but you'll get multiple questions out of this graph alone. So let's take a look at this graph. So we have some reactants and we have some products. We know that the graph is showing the performance of without an enzyme and with an enzyme. And on the x-axis, you have some reaction that occurs, and on the y-axis, you have the amount of energy that is utilized. So what's happening in this reaction or in this graph altogether is we have some reactants, like we said, that turns into products. And if we don't have an enzyme, we consume so much energy to get to the reactant to the product. But if we add a booster or if we add an enzyme, what ends up happening is the lower curve represents with an enzyme because we're utilizing not that much energy as compared to without an enzyme to get to your product. So in this case, this graph basically shows the relationship without an enzyme in red to with an enzyme in blue to basically indicate that enzymes don't really want to utilize that much energy. So that way they can get to the products a lot quicker. So the activation energy is the energy that is required to go from reactant to product. And you could see here, you could see the activation energy is an item that is needed for both with and without an enzyme. However, the activation energy without an enzyme is going to be a lot bigger than the activation enzyme with the enzyme. So the activation energy, I should say, with the enzyme is going to be a lot smaller than the activation of energy without an enzyme. And that makes sense because we don't want to utilize that much energy from the get-go. And overall, we have energy that exists throughout the whole reaction. So the point of this graph is to show that there is less energy consumption from the start when it comes to utilizing an enzyme. And therefore, the activation energy is going to be a lot smaller with an enzyme. So let's take a look at enzymes and how they work overall. We showed this picture prior in a previous video, and you can review that video as well. That is section 2.1's lesson. And we said that just to debrief, when an enzyme works, it works with a substrate to then combine together to become an enzyme substrate complex at the active site is where it joins, by the way. So the substrate will attach to the enzyme at the active site, and then it becomes this enzyme substrate complex to then formulate products to release for what they need to be used for. So the thing is, remember, we know that enzymes are there to speed up the chemical reactions by lowering that activation energy. And the point is they have these catalysts that are going to do that for them. It is a unique 3D structure where you have some enzyme that has to attract to some substrate, and the goal is to form the enzyme substrate complex to then release the substrate or convert the substrates into their products. So the substrate will go to their products. And so that way it could be utilized for what it needs to be utilized for, meaning the products of the reaction. And we know that enzymes can be reused over and over again. So let's talk about the environmental factors that are required for enzymes to function properly. So the first one is optimal temperature. So, for example, enzymes in the body will be optimal at 37 degrees Celsius. And the problem is if you have too high or too low temperatures, the enzymes can't work properly and therefore can't actually lower activation energy if they're not in specific temperatures for that specific enzyme. So remember, there are tons of different enzymes in the environment, and even in our body alone, that have to go from reactant to product. However, there are different types of optimal temperatures that are required to go from reactant to product depending on what the enzyme is. So, for example, an enzyme in your stomach might have an optimal temperature of X, Y, and Z degrees, but the same enzyme will work optimally maybe in a different part of the body. For example, you could say your eye will work better with a specific enzyme when it is a higher temperature. So, enzymes work differently based on their purpose. Now, this is the same thing with optimal pH. There are different enzymes that work better in different conditions. For example, the stomach is acidic. So their pH is going to be a lot lower for specific enzymes that work best in the stomach, and also substrate concentration. So we know that as a substrate increases, the enzyme activity increases because there is more possibility for that enzyme to meet a substrate that it can attach to, that therefore can go ahead and formulate that enzyme substrate complex to therefore create more product. So that is important as well. Now, when we talk about those environmental temperatures and the last one specifically, the substrate concentration, it's important to note that enzymes don't just work by themselves with the substrate. Oftentimes, there could be other items either that are fighting for the space of the enzyme or going to try to block the enzyme in some way. So let's explore those. So the first one is called competitive inhibition. And so competitive inhibition is a process, and the specific process in the way that it works is you have the substrate, which is in blue here, and originally you would have the enzyme that goes and attaches to that substrate to then form the enzyme substrate complex that therefore can release the appropriate products. But what if I told you that there was something on the other side that competes with the substrate spot? So it competes with specifically the enzyme to go ahead and attach to that active site. And therefore, it's going to sometimes block more enzymes getting to that active site by itself attaching to it, and therefore reducing the possibility that the enzyme can actually attach to the substrate. And that's called competitive inhibition. And this is called an inhibitor. So I'm just going to put a little I here. So that, for example, is the inhibitor. And the inhibitor, for example, I should say not that, but this is the inhibitor right here. And this is the enzyme. So we have the E enzyme, I inhibitor. And you can see here that the inhibitor has attached to the substrate itself for the active site, therefore preventing the enzyme from actually binding to the substrate. And this can overcome this enzyme, and therefore the problem is that we sometimes have to increase the substrate concentration. So if you get a problem related to AP biology, usually an FRQ, and they say that they release a drug that can increase more substrate, and we found that that helps improve the enzyme concentration that is being able to react positively, then you know that you have a competitive inhibitor that was there previously blocking that position. So that's competitive inhibition. Now you can have competitive, or I should say non-competitive inhibition. And so that means that you have the active site, the enzyme can attach to it. However, there's another spot on that substrate. And the non-competitive inhibitor, so that right there, can attach to another site on the substrate, therefore rendering this whole entire substrate's purpose reduced. So basically, if an enzyme comes in at this point, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because it's attached to that non-competitive inhibitor. So it reduces the chances again of the enzyme working properly, but it's not competing for a spot like competitive inhibition. It's just basically it is fighting for the possibility for the active site to work properly in its favor as an enzyme. So that's non-competitive inhibition. Then you have uncompetitive inhibition. So uncompetitive inhibition is when you have the enzyme and it attaches to the substrate, and then what ends up happening is the inhibitor can bind only to this enzyme substrate complex and therefore render this unfeasible to work. And that it only occurs after the enzyme is attached to the substrate. So the way that you could see a scenario here is say that they had some sort of enzyme that a pharmaceutical company was making, and we know that it attaches to the substrate. And we know we want to block the further purpose of the enzyme substrate complex. And we know from before non-competitive and competitive inhibitors don't work properly. So they might introduce an uncompetitive inhibitor, which basically attaches after the enzyme attaches to the substrate, therefore rendering it unfeasible. So to recap, a competitive inhibitor is fighting for the active site spot with the enzyme. A non-competitive inhibitor is not fighting for the active site, but a different location on that substrate to render it not working properly. An uncompetitive inhibitor attaches after the enzyme attaches to the substrate itself. So now we're going to try to formulate a quiz question together. Take a moment, pause this video, and then unpause once you've selected your answer. We'll review together. Okay, so let's take a look at this question. It talks about in a renewable energy research project, scientists are trying an enzyme that catalyzes the breakdown of plant material for biofuel production when substrate Z is introduced. So we know that there is some substrate that's introduced, and then we know that the fuel production, biofuel production completely stops. So that's something to note here, even after adding more plant material to the reaction. When substance Z is removed, the reaction immediately resumes at full efficiency. Based on this, scientists conclude that substance Z is it A, a competitive inhibitor, B, a non-competitive inhibitor, C, a cofactor, or D, an allosteric activator? So let's see if you got the correct answer. So the answer is B, a non-competitive inhibitor. And the reason why we know this is because we note that we have some substrate. So we have substance C is introduced, and that there is something that stops completely. Our reaction that we want to have is the biofuel production. And we know that even though we're adding more of this substance C, it really is stopping the production with or without the enzyme. And we know that once this item is removed, substance C, the reaction completely resumes to full efficiency. Because they're not fighting for the same spot as the enzyme, and it works properly when the substance is removed, that's called a non-competitive inhibitor. It is not fighting for a spot. If it's there, it will render it stopping. If it's not there, then it will continue to work as normal. So that's what's going to be a non-competitive inhibitor. I hope questions like this help, and I hope you enjoy this video just as a review for section 3.2. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you can enjoy more videos like this to help you study along your journey for either AP biology or college biology as well. Hey, Geeking Out on STEM family, guess what? We want you to hit that subscribe button. Why? Because we'll be producing more content just like this for the AP Biology exam and the new digital SAT exam. By subscribing, you'll be getting exclusive up-to-date tips, tricks, and secrets for both exams. Also, if you're a parent, a teacher, a homeschool instructor, or a student, you might be looking for affordable and exclusive digital products to help improve multiple choice questions, free response questions, or question bank questions related to both the digital SAT or AP Biology exam. We have them here. Make sure to check out our link tree in our bio for curated resources that you won't find anywhere else. These unique resources are designed to help you raise your score. By hitting the subscribe button, the more subscribers we get, by the way, the more videos we can make. So make sure to join our family to ensure that you get a perfect score for both exams. We can't wait to help you succeed.